I want to welcome everyone to the second panel of the day, the space science panel. I've been excited about this one for quite some time and excited to have our panelists with us. Dr. Pamela Gay is a scientist at the Planetary Science Institute and an astronomer. You may know her as the host of Astronomy Cast. We also have Dr. Graham Lau, who is got an academic foundation in biology, chemistry, astrophysics, geology. He works with the Blue Marble Space International nonprofit as well. I'm excited to hear more of his perspective. And Dr. Kirby Runyon, another planetary scientist and astrogeologist, if I may, Kirby. And Kirby is also the co-host of the Earth and Space Experience with me, which we've mentioned a couple times this morning as well. We just got back from Spaceport America and exploring analogs in the New Mexico desert, similar to places on the moon, Mars, and elsewhere in the solar system. Ron is joining me once again, Virgin Galactic astronaut Ron Rosano as co-host. So I have got all of you pinned. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You guys will appear large in the recording. The others can arrange, of course, their screen however they like. But we are ready to kick this off. And like I did with the astronaut panel, I want to give each of you the opportunity to kind of share your story and share to put a space metaphor spin on it. You've probably all heard me. Well, Kirby's heard me use this a few times now, but what is the trajectory that brought you here today to being a space scientist and being at a space education event? On my screen, we've got Pamela, Graham, and Kirby, so perhaps we'll start in that order, and that can be organic as we go. But go ahead, Pamela.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to meet you this morning, afternoon, evening, depending on whatever time zone you happen to be in. I have to admit, I'm one of the many, many scientists who got here via science fiction. When I was a tiny nerdling, I have strong memories as a child of arguing with my mother over whether or not we would watch reruns of Battlestar Galactica or the TV show Fame. And there was one point where my dad was just like, just go use the other television. And I was allowed to use the television in my parents' bedroom just to end the argument. The idea that life here could exist out there beyond the stars got me reading every science fiction book I could. And my dad was also a science fiction lover. He was a computer scientist rather than a astronomer or physicist because he had a young family he had to feed, and so he went into computer science. But he was always there to discuss movies, TV shows, figure out, is that science plausible? Is that science plausible? I was required to sit on the other side of him from my mother so that I wouldn't bother her with all of my, is this how that worked in movies? Um, and when I was in eighth grade, I got pulled into a astronomy club at the local community center run by a high school teacher that on the weekends would drive the 495 loop around Massachusetts, starting at the Cape and ending in my small town up near the New Hampshire border. And that teacher single-handedly changed all of our lives. Many of us are still in contact. He taught us to launch rockets. He taught us about planets and stars. He got us involved in Harvard's Project Star curriculum. He helped us go to space camp. And he opened the door for me to go to the Soviet Union as part of a peacekeeping exchange where I worked at the 6 meter telescope. There were Soviet students that worked at the Harvard Smithsonian, just high school kids. And I went to university thinking I'd go into political science and focus on astronomy politics or go into astronomy journalism and focus on the journalism side because no one was willing to say, yeah, sure, you're one of the top astronomy students in the United States. We're willing to send you to the Soviet Union, but hey, you're a girl, you don't go into science. And then when I hit university with that dual degree, I was like, the astronomy classes don't make me learn economics, and I kind of hate human beings when I understand economics, and I don't like hating human beings. So I'm just going to study astronomy and computer science. And then in computer science, they kept making us program hockey related things. And I hit the point of, I really like astronomy. I really hate hockey. And so I just got a degree in astrophysics and then got a PhD in astrophysics. And I'm still here. And I never stopped wanting to be a journalist. I never stopped wanting to spread science around the world. So I work with the International Astronomical Union's Office of Astronomy Outreach to help UN funded ideas reach the world. And through my podcasts, I help everyone look beyond the stars. So that's my trajectory. Battlestar Galactica is to blame for everything in my life, I guess.
I also love for the educators here that it was a teacher that gave you that gravity
Yeah,
assist and taught you about rockets and all of that. That's fantastic.
yeah.
I also appreciate that hockey also changed your trajectory. And you might appreciate knowing that I brought up one of the events we were working on together in the locker room, and one of my hockey buddies was like, "I love astronomy cast. I love her voice." And then he talked to me about a lot of astronomy, so he definitely is a listener. But
That's awesome.
let's go to Graham next.
Cool. Yeah, I love that, Pamela. For my nerdling youth, I was 5 when I decided that I wanted to be a musician and a scientist, but I've still never quite figured out exactly what I want to do. I'm in my 40s and I still don't know exactly what I'm gonna do when I grow up. And even, when I went to college, I couldn't decide between all these different fields of science. So I did take degrees in biology and chemistry and then studied astrophysics, and then I jumped into geology. And even now, I still feel like I should have tossed in some other degrees in like philosophy and maybe sports medicine just for fun. I've always loved meditation and martial arts and playing music, writing poetry. I think there's so much to the act of living that goes well beyond what you do to sell your labor in our society. And so even though I am a scientist, I think my interest in astrobiology is because of my interest in what we are as human beings, what our civilization is. The questions of astrobiology, and for those, I'm sure people have heard of this term. I used to give talks to like schools, and I would like, does anyone know what astrobiology is? And no one would know. And now it feels like everyone kind of knows, which I really love. But just in case, astrobiology scientifically is us trying to understand the origins, evolution, and distribution of life in the universe. Is life out there? But as I often say on my show for NASA and in my writings, for me, astrobiology is our human quest to understand the nature of life. It's all of us working together to understand these big questions that we've been asking ourselves through religion and philosophy and spirituality and science and all of these tools of knowing throughout the past many millennia. We've been asking, like, why are we here? What is this all about? What is this experience that we're all having individually in our conscious awareness? And then this larger shared civilizational process that we're going through. And if we're experiencing this right now, we're learning about the evolution of life on our world, the fact that we share a 13.8 billion year lineage across the cosmos. Are there other representations of the lineage out there? Are there representations of biology out there? Are there representations of civilization out there? And if so, what does it mean? Much like Pamela as a young person watching Battlestar Galactica, I loved sci-fi as a kid. I would watch Star Trek and Star Wars. I've always been a big video game person, and so I love playing video games. I'm more of a fan of the sci-fi horror genre. So for me, things like Aliens and Predator, horror movies like Pandorum and things like that are kind of more in my vein of interest. But it also makes me wonder, like, should we be optimistic or a little terrified about meeting alien life? What kinds of experiences might they have that are wildly different from our own? And so part of the science of astrobiology that really gets me intrigued are these bigger questions and how we're going about answering them in our very little ways. We're making small steps in these little processes. And even right now is a very groovy time to be alive because, we have spacecraft that are out there right now asking these questions for us. Could we find signs of life in our solar system, on Mars, on Europa, or in Enceladus? And then beyond our own solar system, we now have thousands of exoplanets we've confirmed to exist, telling us that there's probably many billions, if not a trillion, of these exoplanets, these worlds in our own galaxy. That leaves a lot of potential for possible places for life to be.
It is really awesome. I think about being in high school and kind of realizing the reality that despite Star Trek stories, there was no proof of a planet around another star, and now we can prove thousands, and we know
Yeah,
crazy
it's
things
wild.
about them. I was I love sharing book recommendations. I've been reading my way through
Hmm.
Alien Earths and exoplanets where it rains lava. I'm in. Like there's some weird stuff out there.
Heck yeah.
Awesome. And Graham, I talk a lot about too science fiction as inspiration for how we might do things better. And we can learn from the utopian stories, but even the dystopian stories, we those are good cautionary tales.
Absolutely.
Let's kick it over to Dr. Kirby Runyon.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And Pamela and Graham, really inspired by the stories you got to share. I've heard bits and pieces of those, but it was nice to kind of have that all together. Likewise, since I was a 3-year-old nerdling, Pamela, I love that term, thank you. I've been in love with space. And what I've realized is that the trajectory of my life, both professionally and personally, is to answer the singular question, what is it like in space? And as a very visual person, that often means what does it look like in space? Now, I do want to fly to space. I just got my third rejection letter back from NASA for the astronaut program. So I've applied 3 times now, and I don't intend for it to be the last, but hopefully, maybe there's a private sector way to get myself into space so I can really answer that question, what's it like in space? But as a very visual person, I'm really turned on by the spacecraft images. In undergraduate, in college, I was a physics major, and I'm terrible at math. And I say that in a way that is hopefully encouraging for people who are also bad at math, because even if you're bad at math, there are still some less mathematical ways to science and to space. And I found that ultimately in planetary geology. But I failed my first upper level physics class, which was electricity and magnetism one. It turns out doing triple integrals in spherical coordinates to solve Maxwell's equations is hard. And it took me multiple times through that class. I did pass with a C plus the second time I took that class. But and my trajectory was to become an astrophysicist because I thought that was the only science available to me. But it was around that time in undergrad when I was procrastinating from doing electricity and magnetism or thermal dynamics or Lagrangian mechanics that I would waste time by going on the Planetary Society's website and looking at the latest images from the Mars rovers. At that time, it was Spirit and Opportunity, of looking at the pictures from the Cassini Saturn orbiter and these amazing moons that it was flying by. And I had the very slow motion realization that it wasn't astronomers and astrophysicists so much looking at these pictures of the solar system, but it was geologists doing this, and I guess that made sense, right? Because like planets and moons are made out of rock and ice, and studying rocks is geology. And geology had never crossed my mind before that. We didn't have it in school. The best we had was like eighth grade earth science, where we learned sedimentary, metamorphic, igneous rocks, and then we talked about the water cycle. So not a lot of geology. Um, and if I did think about geology, it sounded boring and dry, like, ugh, who cares about rocks? They're so common. I stub my toe. Who cares? Um, but it was the Planetary Society blogger, Emily Lakdawala, who blogged about what the Mars rovers were seeing, what the Cassini orbiter was seeing on the icy moons at Saturn. And she would take an image and walk you through that image and teach you how to forensically reconstruct past natural events that gave rise to that beautiful alien landscape using the language of geology. And that's what turned me on to geology. I didn't realize it was a forensic science prior to this point, and it is. And when I learned that, and I was also really floundering in my quantum mechanics class, I decided to shift my trajectory, get a gravity assist, if you will, in the direction of planetary geology, because I could both scratch that space itch and also get to do science that didn't require me to be really good at solving triple integrals and spherical coordinates to solve Maxwell's equations of electrodynamics. At the same time, I've always been fascinated with human spaceflight. I've read every astronaut biography there is, or the biographies of the mission controllers. Apollo 13 is still my favorite space movie. And So as I've progressed in my career, I've looked for ways to combine human spaceflight with the planetary geology. One of the ways that's manifesting currently, as Mark mentioned, is we just got back from New Mexico, leading a cohort of teachers and astronauts to see the geologic landforms that commercial astronauts like Ron get to see from space and to understand, to scientifically understand what has got to be a deeply moving spiritual experience to see Earth from space. And I hope I get to see that. And I hope as many people as want to get to experience that. I hope we get to see a full democratization of human spaceflight, but we have to start small. At the same time, these geologic landforms are very strikingly similar to similar lava flows, sand dune fields on Mars, the Moon, Saturn's moon Titan, even Pluto, other places around the solar system. So I say that you get to experience space without leaving Earth. And so to kind of wrap that up, everything in my life, not everything, but many things in my life, both professionally and personally, are about answering that question, what is it like in space? And for me, I like to answer that question both experientially and visually. And finally, to bring as many people along for the ride as I possibly can.
And Kirby's informed enthusiasm is infectious. And I also didn't give much thought to geology before working with Kirby, but now I realize how poorly it's named because it's really planetary science
It's it's
on
really it's really
Earth.
planetology.
Yeah,
It should be named
planetology.
planetology.
There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I've got a couple other questions I want to ask you guys, but Ron, if you've got anything for the panel, I want to kick it over to you first.
Oh, well, thanks. No, I'd say carry on, please.
Okay, great.
Nothing pending. Yeah, yeah, that was all. That's all really well said. It's great to have you all from your different backgrounds.
Well, I'm going to put a spin on a typical question I ask. So at the end of the our questions with the astronaut panel this morning, I of course asked them how might we best prepare students to participate in the growing space economy and in humanity's future in space. But because I know some of Kirby's stories, I think I'm going to ask this in a slightly different way. Like, what story from your experience would you most want the educators and students watching this video to hear from you? I don't know that this will be your choice, Kirby, but this question is inspired by your New Horizons experience. So,
So sorry, asking me or the panel?
just the panel, like what
Yeah.
story of yours do you think would you most want educators and students to hear?
Okay. I hope that space writ large, whether that's from a dare I say spiritual humanist perspective or a science perspective, leads people to greater depths of amazement, awe, and wonder of the cosmos. And whether you are discovering something for the first time in humanity, or you're discovering something for the first time for yourself, even if it's something that's been known before, that thrill of discovery, that thrill of figuring something out, is to me a bridge. It's such a thrill to do that, that it's a bridge between that existential, spiritual, humanist perspective and the science. For me, it was as a graduate student at Johns Hopkins, getting to be the first person in the universe, as far as I know, to get to see mountains on Pluto. I still say Pluto's a planet. That's another debate. But, the images were slowly trickling in from the spacecraft at slower than dial-up speeds. And I was typing in the rsync command in my Unix terminal on my Mac to get the next image in the queue a day or two after the flyby. And these pictures are trickling in. That next picture had a black bar at the bottom. It wasn't fully downloaded from space. 3 billion miles away at Pluto, it was still coming in. But it was enough to see these big, jagged, 10,000 foot tall water ice mountains on Earth or on Pluto. And so for educators and students, it's the thrill of discovery, whether you're discovering it for yourself the first time, or maybe you do get to make a discovery that is new for all of humanity. But it's that amazement, awe, and wonder of our cosmos that comes from discovery.
I love it. And for anyone who's interested, Kirby's colleague, was it Oliver White, right, Kirby?
Yeah, Oliver White.
We've got a great video of him talking about those mountains of chaos on Pluto. So,
That's right.
well, Graham or Pamela, if either one of you wants to jump in.
Yeah, I could throw out a lot of things from my own past that I think might help for educators, for students. I think my biggest one, and a lot of folks who know me know my own story. There was a point in my life when I was a teenage father, a high school dropout, and a junkie. You can always come back from bad decisions. There are some mistakes that are permanent and they matter. And sometimes people get hurt along the way. Sometimes you hurt yourself along the way. I think we all need to be there for each other and see these warning signs, especially for young people. In my own life, I've tried my best now to start giving back for young people who are falling through the cracks, who are facing issues with drug use, with broken families, with finding themselves out in the streets. Um, those people need help, and they don't need a teacher saying, "Well, you have to study science." People going through that experience, they might be interested. They're probably very smart. They probably have a lot within them to give in this world, but trying to tell them that there's a trajectory they have to follow to get somewhere they want to be in the future isn't the best thing in those moments. In those moments, it's to listen, to hear their stories, and to see if you can help them find their own spark. And whatever that spark is, that gives them some purpose to help them find their way forward. A lot of people, a lot of young people in our world get lost out there alone in the dark, and they never figure out how to rebound for themselves, how to find their purpose, how to find some meaning for themselves. And I think a lot of us, we have that idea that you have to have like a solid thing. Like this is the thing I'm gonna be, the thing I'm gonna do. It doesn't have to be that. It has to be the thing that brings you some meaning inside, some purpose. And I can say for myself, having battled back through that, eventually through night school, able to get a diploma, and then eventually to go to college before I could earn my degrees. I can say that there are people out there who need your help, and a lot of them are your students, they're your friends, they're your family, and we can really help those people just by listening.
Well,
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. The most important thing I ever learned was a kid, an adult, anyone can't learn if they're hurting. And I've taken that lesson through everything in my career. At the time that I was told that I was working for a program, the Educational Studies program at MIT, which provides not after school, it provides weekend and summer programs for high school kids. I'd been in the program as a kid. It probably saved my life by introducing me to other kids like me who were super smart, not from super affluent families, didn't know how to fit in. It turns out that gifted kids are largely kids whose parents were able to provide them with experiences and out of class learning opportunities the rest of us just didn't get. And so there's this weird division when you're dealing with smart kids, where it's the kids who've learned to problem solve out of absolutely anything as a means of survival, and the kids who've just learned because they've seen everything, been there, done that. And a lot of teachers cater to the affluent kids because it's easy. They know how to do it. The parents are there to support them. And learning how to reach out to the kids that I didn't have Graham's experience. I was really expert at going, okay, I've got to get out of this situation. How many candy bars do I need to sell to go away for the summer? I sold a lot of candy bars, probably caused a lot of cavities. And learning how to be there and say, I see you, I hear you, how can I help? And it applies working with kids and it applies working with college kids. I can't tell you how many times I've had college students sit down in my office and be like, I just need someone to listen. I know I'm fucking up in class. I have, and then they core dump the most amazing stories of their struggles, and they literally have no one to listen. And when you listen and when you hand them something as simple as a Cliff Bar, a lot of professors learn, and not nearly enough professors. It's like one professor here, one professor there. Learn to keep food in their office that they can just hand their students. My graduate student area, when I was a university professor, I had food delivered every month, so they always knew they had food in there. And it's just shit like that. And I'm going to swear because we shouldn't have to deal with our students are going hungry in a world like the one we live in, but that's our reality. And making sure your kids know they can come and talk to you, making sure they know if they're hungry, there's food. These things allow them to thrive. And today I work mostly with adults, and we've had two people die in the CosmoQuest community where we were the ones in our online community who realized they were gone. And I've always told my community, if you're alone, if you're in trouble, give me your phone numbers. Let me know how to reach out to you. And there is nothing worse than being the person saying, I'm sorry, I think this person has had a crisis and you need to go to their house and check on them. But then I also got to say, they weren't alone. They were never alone. They were part of an online community dedicated to science where we talked to them and saw them online every single day. They were never alone. Don't let people be alone. Tell them if everybody leans in, we will be okay. And then introduce them to the stars. Show them how their life can have meaning through community science projects, through so many citizen science projects like the ones Kirby and I are working on. When we've done surveys of why do you do citizen science when there's so many things you could spend your time on, like Minecraft. I'm a Minecraft junkie. Um, they say it's because this gives my life meaning. We provide meaning. Keep providing meaning.
Oh, I love it. And those responses, what a great foundation to start from. That you when you're talking about educators and students in particular, you're talking about people, right?
Yeah,
And none of this really matters if those sort of primary needs aren't met. And community is a primary need too. And
yeah.
Carson was talking about that this morning. It to layer on that, and Pamela, that was kind of a great segue at the end. Like, what role might space science play in our educational communities today and preparing kids for their future? If you can each perhaps speak to that, and then we'll open it up to questions from the group.
So space science careers are something where absolutely every passion is going to be needed as we build a scientific future. I'm proud to say that along with Sandlin Buxner and Georgina Kramer, George is what she goes by, we put out a kids book just called The Moon. Sandlin Buxner is the first author. It's on Amazon. It's a Penguin Random House book. It's there. It's the art is amazing. And one of the things we were very careful to do is add pages on these are the careers that are going to be necessary in space. And it includes nutritionist, uh, artist, computer programmers, engineers, whatever your passion is, there's a way to see yourself beyond our planet's limits. And that idea of I am not trapped in this small community. There is worlds beyond my own that I can move into, no matter my passion is important. On the Blue Origin stream the other day, they were talking about how New Origin has a club STEM club. It's club something,
Oh,
but
Club
it's
for
Club
the
a
for the
Future.
future.
Yeah.
club for the future. It's focused on STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and showing all the different roles. And not everyone is going to go to college. Not everyone should go to college. And making it clear we need electricians. We need all these people that it's a certification program and helping them get from the life they have now to the life they want for the future and making it clear whatever your passion is, space needs it. I think it's that combination message.
Yeah, absolutely. It's whatever your strengths and passions are. There's a
Yeah.
space for you
Mhm.
in the growing space economy, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's
Can,
true.
can,
Yeah,
It's oh, sorry, go ahead, Ron.
yeah.
can I
I'll chime
riff
in
on
with a
Pam? Oh,
yeah,
go
yeah.
ahead. Go
Let
ahead,
me chime
Graham.
in. I'll chime in with one thought. In talking to kids, we're going to have a space hotel. at some point, and probably not
Yeah.
that far away. They're going to need fashion designers that could figure out what the best clothes to wear are. They're going to need nutritionists to figure out the best food. They're going to need people that are experts in hospitality to work in the space hotel and take care of people to go there. They need graphic artists and photographers, videographers. Um, so, it's can be so many different things, and it's
Mhm.
changing rapidly. I think I'm a very different landscape in 10 years. And I think the opportunities there. I think students should be encouraged that they'll go to space someday, you know, and have opportunities to go that they don't see now. So it's
Can,
exciting.
can I riff on something, Ron, you said, and Pamela, you said
Yeah.
there? Yeah, I 100% agree that not everyone, that college is not for everyone, and not everyone should try to go to college, even if you want a career in space.
Yeah.
I feel very lucky, blessed to have a number of good friends who never went to college. They're in the blue-collared, skilled trades. And if they and they don't work in space, but if they did, they could. They're welders. One's a carpenter, and I think Japan recently launched a wooden CubeSat. And going to a trade school or a community college after high school and learning welding, plumbing, pipe fitting, which I just learned was a thing, being an electrician, those sorts of skilled trades are incredibly important. They pay well. They're also really fulfilling, especially if you don't like sitting in front of a computer all day long. And so we need more blue collar, skilled trades in the space field. They're hiring these people like crazy, and it's a way to do space and probably soon to get to go to space without having to go all the way to a PhD.
And when I did the interview series for Space Prize back in 2021, 22, I was floored. I wasn't just scientists, engineers, and astronauts. Like I interviewed a space historian, a space lawyer, a space artist. We've got one later today. I interviewed a space interior designer, designing the interiors of luxury spacecraft. Like today, those are already jobs that exist. So absolutely, there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there just for a moment too, because like being a scuba diver in the neutral buoyancy lab in Houston doesn't require a college degree. It just requires a good background in scuba diving. You could be a machinist in a machine shop at JPL or somewhere else in the space industry, not needing a college degree, but just having a skill and a trade and be part of the space industry in general. But I think for me, especially outside of space science, is for me the realm of astrobiology. Anyone can be involved in astrobiology and learning about it, exploring these topics together. I was that young person who was nerding out about aliens around campfires with friends. And so I think everyone is welcome to the conversation and has something to add, some personal opinion, perspective, and value to bring. You don't even have to have a job in the space industry to have some opinion and some idea and be involved in these citizen science projects that Kirby and others have run, that Pamela runs are incredible ways to be involved. There are lots of other ways just to join us and on this journey of just asking the bigger questions of what this all means.
Graham, you reminded me of two other things too. There's an organization called Space for Trades, and this is the purpose is getting trades involved and sort of making that path available to students, visible to students. And then also, I play hockey with a couple of guys. Exactly what you're describing. They didn't get degrees. They were welders. They became machinists. And SpaceX and Hawthorne is one of their company's big clients, and they're up there all the time. And I love telling the story of the morning. One of them turns to me and he's like, "Mark, those guys at SpaceX are the dumbest smart people I know. We got to teach them the most basic stuff." Because we absolutely need their skill set, right? They're hurting for welders and machinists. So room for everybody in Space for Trades. We did lose Pamela. Hopefully we'll get her back. I'll watch for her and pin her
Nope,
again.
she's on.
Oh, okay. I need to
I'm
repin her.
back. Sorry.
Hang on. I
Yep,
need to find you and pin you again though.
My Zoom crashed.
Okay.
Yeah, no idea.
We got you back.
Um, yeah. So I was just going to add, it's important to remember that there are people as smart as any PhD you
Mhm.
know who didn't go to college. Um, a lot of my closest friends didn't go to college. They instead either had personal struggles they had to overcome, or they became computer scientists and millionaires instead of going to college, which it just confuses me every day as an astronomer. Um, so my best friend, she it just had life got in the way of university. And she ended up working as a machinist on the floor at Coors Tech, which is a company that does things like the hips for hip replacements, soda bottles, just about anything you can imagine manufactured. She started on the floor as a machinist and has worked her way up so that she's now one of the international quality engineering leads, making sure that when you get a hip, it actually works the way it is supposed to. And so there are many journeys and there are many brilliant people, and we need to be open to your CV and resume doesn't define your potential.
Love it. That's in alignment with the quote Graham just shared in the chat too. And we have, I had dropped in the chat a prompt to let people offer their own questions. And Oren has, I think, a great one. And I imagine you guys are going to have enlightening answers here. But Oren, do you want to come on mic or on camera and ask your question?
You mean to actually be visible, Mark?
It's up to you. We can hear you. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Space is for everyone, and my question was, given the environment I grew up in, which has changed dramatically socioeconomically, right? And Pamela, you're absolutely right. Graham, you're absolutely right. People are struggling. Children are struggling. Not everyone needs to go to college. But my question is, as someone who was lucky enough to go to college, who was, I won't say denied, but was sort of put off, right, from science after
Yeah.
getting a Bachelor of Science in Theoretical Mathematics. Um, for those who are not going to go into space, even
Mhm.
though space is for everyone, what can you share regarding space for the benefit of the Earth? Now, I managed Severe and I managed CRISPR. I can't remember the project now, but both of them were NASA projects
Mhm.
that I worked on. I led a team to look at the Earth for environment, for animals, for climate change, et cetera. And there's lots of just getting folks involved because, again, for
Yeah.
some, they're going to think space is too far. But being involved in space for benefiting the earth, I think is another angle to go. Be interested in your comments because I have to go up to my high school and talk about this.
So we actually just like right before this recorded our next episode of Escape Velocity Space News, and it's focused on climate change, looking at Earth as a planet and what's happening in our water cycle as the world warms.
Yep.
And treating our world as a planet that needs to be looked at through a system of physics and geophysics. One of the things I just learned is the complexity of understanding the interplay of glaciers and sea level. One thing that had never occurred to me is when you have massive, massive glaciers on the surface of Greenland, two different things happen. The land gets squished, so you have lower land level under the weight
Absolutely.
of the glacier, and the gravity of the glacier literally pulls ocean water, creating higher ocean levels near Greenland. Now, when the Greenland ice sheets melt, it causes the land to recoil both as a trampoline, just elastically, but not all of the land recoils elastically. Some of it also comes up more like the way if you dump your finger into, I do this with face cream all the time, and then you come back later, it's flat, and that's a viscous recoil. So when we try and understand the sea level relative to things we have put on the land, we have to consider the way land will recoil viscously and elastically from the weight of glaciers being removed, as well as water levels changing, both from adding more water, adding heat, and removing the gravity. And so every different landform has fingerprints of past melted glaciers in the sediments. And it's people with physics degrees who are figuring this stuff out about our world and will be able to say, yes, Jakarta has to move somewhere else, evacuate that city, um, in response to our world going through these ecological and environmental changes. Specific to space exploration, in order for the SpaceX plans to go to Mars to be implemented, we're going to have upwards of 25 launches per day of starships just to support Mars plans. They use methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas, as their fuel, and have both releases from their facilities of these greenhouse gases and are also injecting chemicals and particulate matter into our atmosphere. Scientists who are modeling it, this looks catastrophic. And so we're going to need to develop entire new arms of organizations like the EPA to figure out how do we not destroy our world in the name of going to other worlds. There's so many careers necessary, so many horrifying things taking place. I really wish I didn't understand climate change some days. I think I'd sleep better at night. But the kids today are the ones who are going to have to live with a planet that is seeing cities having to move. And so the jobs are there again in every single possible field. It's the infographic videos on the Weather Channel that are going to convince people of the danger of the new hurricanes. Everything from art to physics and computer science modeling is needed.
Yeah, Pamela, in the sort of back channel chat during the astronaut panel, we were talking about that too with Carson and her communication and astronomy degree. It's like it does come down to the
Yeah.
illustrators and the people who can speak eloquently about these topics to communicate them to the public, doesn't it?
And I want to jump in just for a moment for Oren's question. We humans we have this tendency to love to paint dichotomies so that there's a point and a counterpoint. We love to
Yeah.
think that way about everything. People feel like if you're a scientist, you can't also be an artist. That's not true. If you're sending things into space, you can't also care for the planet. Entirely not true. We love to paint these dichotomies and the like why waste money on space when we have problems here on Earth is a very false dichotomy that we need to
Hmm.
break civilizationally. If people really want to consider where our spending is going, then space is not it. We're not spending anything on space close to what we're spending on things like the military,
Right.
designing new bombs and warships and fighter planes and things like that. So if you want to present any kind of dichotomy, you should talk about why are we spending money on warships when we have problems here on Earth.
Yeah.
But even then, like we can do a lot of things all at one time. And I think for students learning about this, it's important they remember that there's some of us who love space exploration and astronautics and sending people to Mars is a cool idea for a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us. We also care about the planet. In the space industry in general, you find a lot of people who really, really care about the Earth. They're involved in nonprofit organizations and NGOs of various types to help with things like wildfire mitigation, resource allocation, getting fresh drinking water and resources to people around the globe. There's so many of us in the space industry who are also doing that work too.
Hmm.
And
I've
could
heard
I?
it
Oh,
explained like I've
go
heard it
ahead,
explained like,
Kirby.
well, money that's spent on space doesn't just float away out there in space. It's all spent right here on Earth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really is the best way to understand Earth is from space.
I'll take a stab at some of this, Orwin. I appreciate your question. And Graham mentioned some of the things it is a false dichotomy to think space or Earth. When it comes to fixing problems on Earth, chronic hunger is a very solvable problem that is still a problem somehow. NASA's budget in a good year, I think, is around $25 billion a year. And I think SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, food stamps, I think that's around like $80 billion a year. So even in that
Yeah.
one small example, we're spending a lot more money fighting hunger than we are on space exploration. And I think that's right and proper. I think there's also something to be said for having a job you love. And space is such this romantic ideal that attracts people to it. My wife was not a space person before she met me, and when she tells people that she's married to a space guy, it gets a certain positive response. Oh, wow, that's cool. He does that for a living. And getting to have a job you love is something I don't take for granted and something I wish more people could have. Now, of course, you can have a job that's not space related that you love, but space is one of those things that kind of attracts people and that people tend to love. And if you have yet another way for people to have a job that they love that is optimistic and that also has sometimes unintended positive environmental consequences, I think that's a win for humanity writ large. My understanding is that the having an annual Earth Day celebration and recognition of the importance of environmental stewardship resulted from people, not robots, looking back at the Earth from the moon, namely Apollo 8 in December of
Right.
1968. And so I think these are very complementary things. Pamela, correct me if I'm wrong. Graham, correct me if I'm wrong if you know. But my understanding about the beginnings of our early modern understanding of Earth's climate change, I think in the 1970s, was really inspired by understanding the atmospheric evolution of the planet Venus. And so this, as I understand this bit of history, this is an area where Earth exploration and space exploration are overlapping members of a Venn diagram.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was not putting that out there as a dichotomy. I think
Mhm.
Ron and probably Mark knew me, but really as a continuum, right?
Yes,
It
continuum's a
is
good way to
really
put
a
it.
continuum, especially given some of the projects I had to do, which were NASA projects, but looking at things and making projects, right? So these were folks that were agriculturalists, but with whom they could then, with that they could then use that data to see how the Sahara was moving forward a couple of inches a year and what that has to do with food security and those types of things. I mean, I was not trying to throw out there that it was a dichotomy. I mean, in
Mhm.
fact, I'd love to go to space. I've seen the line because I happened to have flown on the Concorde when it was going at 63,000 feet back in the day when there was a Concorde. So I am not by any means saying don't spend money on space or that's a waste, but how does one communicate that this is a continuum,
Mhm.
right? That's all. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you. And
That
I'm jealous you
discussion.
got to fly in the Concorde. That's so cool. Did you see the
I
curvature of Earth?
know. I saw the carbon line. Not much, but I saw it.
Love it. Oh,
This discussion reminds me of two other elements, and just in terms of like bringing perspective to it is, you talk about the 25 billion for NASA, 80 billion for SNAP. Well, we spend in the neighborhood of $1 trillion a year on K-12 education in the U.S. across various funding sources. So it's like we are spending money on the things we need to. There are also lots of problems that still need solving. And our friend Inara often makes a comparison that there are Marvel movies that make $2 billion. Like people don't have a problem spending billions of dollars, and so it's important to point out that we can do all these things at once. So.
yeah.
All right. If there are any other questions from the participants here, we got a number of people in the chat, and I'm sort of skimming for questions. But if you have a question right now, drop it in the chat or use the raise hand button. We have right about 10 minutes left in this panel. So if you have questions for our resident planetary scientists, space scientists, I guess I should say, more broadly.
Uh, Mark Perry has a question here
Oh,
that's quite good. It focuses on K-5 education, K-5 education especially.
oh, yeah, I was skimming for the question mark. So let's see.
Yeah.
Which direction should, oh, sorry, I'll back up. Okay. Perry, do you want to actually go on mic and ask your question instead of me trying to paraphrase it here? If you like.
Um, each one of them has, and Owen has addressed climate change slightly and the cascading effects of that and how that is rapidly accelerating. And knowing how much of the gases that are being produced by many different industries across the globe and the race to get off of the planet And, the I think for me, we need to start having some conversations of how we can stabilize or help to make more adaptable or maybe resilient the people that will be on this planet that won't be able to leave. And we are still hundreds, probably, of years away from being able to live in outer space. We have a lot of um, not only medical but biological questions that that need to be addressed. So we can live off planet. I mean, just this is a huge question, but at the same time, it's like I think we need to start focusing a little bit more on the younger folks. And I asked that K through 5 question because we've got some planetary things that are happening now that are accelerating, and we know in the 2030s that the warble of the moon is going to escalate our climate change situations. And it's not just one country that is experiencing all of this planetary detriment, and I mean, there still are climate change deniers, yes, the thing
Terry, let
that's
me
never,
interject.
I go ahead. I can go on and on about that, but go
Yeah, I want
ahead,
to make sure
Mark.
it's a question for the panel. So is there
Yeah,
anything that and then we actually have a student question too I want to get to, but so
okay.
briefly, panelists, if you think about that K-5 population, like our youngest learners, um, does anything come to mind in terms of how to prepare them for their future or protect the planet for them? What comes to mind when you think about our youngest learners?
Yeah, I'll jump in for a quick moment. Some years ago, when I was a student at CU Boulder, University of Colorado, there was a really thoughtful group of young students on campus who had like a green initiative, and they were trying their best to help like turn off lights when they weren't in use and things like that, and get scientists to cut back on their use of certain low temperatures and freezers. I was the first across the entire campus to use a -70 freezer instead of a -80. Very proud of that. But they had this sticker they kept putting up all over the place that really bothered me. It said "Turn off climate change." And they would use it like around like light switches and stuff like that. But it bothered me for the sheer lack of understanding of what climate is.
Yeah.
We can't turn off climate change. It doesn't work that way. We can mitigate our impacts. We can change our behaviors, and we absolutely should right now. There's no time to keep talking about it. There's time to do it right now or face what could be consequential. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know the long-term impacts of climate change, but we need to be more responsible, more thoughtful, and better educated in that process now. And it is the children, it is the K through 5 right now, including my own child, who are going to be the ones most experiencing this world that we're breeding right now for them. And it's not just because of climate, it's because of artificial intelligence, changes to how we access information, misinformation on the internet, the use of social media, gene editing, medicines, pharmaceutical companies. So much is changing right now about the human condition. There's a very great quote that I love from Martin Luther King Jr. in his essay, The World House. He's speaking about our development of technology and our lacking development of our own understanding. And he says we've come to an age of having guided missiles and misguided men. And it makes me wonder, like, really, right now, what I think we need is not just education in science and engineering to understand what's happening in our world. We also need a deeper spiritual understanding together as a civilization. I think we should be teaching children meditation to help them understand their own emotional states, to better avoid those moments of going through bullying and fighting and getting angry and stuff in school, and also dealing with their home lives. Like, meditation can help a lot with that. Teaching children the skills of just being with themselves and thinking beyond needing an AI or a video game or whatever it is to tell them what to think. They need to be with themselves to understand how they're thinking. And so for me, I think from that age of young people, while yes, giving them the knowledge of our ancestors is important, giving them the knowledge of our society is important, it's also really important that we help them understand how to be the embodiment of what they understand.
And I don't want to cut off other answers if Pamela and Kirby have something to add, but with just a couple minutes left, I would love to get to Samira's question.
I bow down to Samira's question.
Samira, if you want to come on mic real quick and ask your question.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry if you can hear me.
Mhm.
Yep.
My question is that I and Elena were high school students, really interested in astronomy and space, and we'd love to contribute to an ongoing project as volunteers if there is such a project.
Yes. So with CosmoQuest, we designed a bunch of online curricula for supporting exploration of the moon with kids doing citizen science projects. Right now, those curricula aren't public facing because we don't have funding for our large staff, but they all exist. And we're actually doing a big fundraiser December 5, 6, 7 to help bring educational support back to everything we do. We currently have NASA funding where Kirby is leading a project related to the moon. Stuart Robbins at the Southwest Research Institute is leading a project related to Mars. We aren't using CosmoQuest because I didn't want to get rid of my DEI content. And so all of our federally funded projects are currently launched at mappers.psi.edu. Kirby and I are going to be doing a live stream showing folks how to use the project, introducing them to it next Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. That is 9 p.m. London. And you're all invited to come check it out. Again, the link is mappers.psi.edu. And we invite you to come help us map other worlds. And if you email me, I can get you that curriculum. And it's a lot of volunteer effort right now. I am trying to find the time to get all of our educational materials public.
Wow, I'm glad she asked that question. That's awesome, Pamela. All right, we've got about a minute left, so I'm going to take the time to thank our panelists. So thank you, Graham. Thank you, Kirby. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Ron, too, of course, for being here and hosting us all. And thank you to everyone who participated in the chat and asked questions. I was looking forward to this panel, and it absolutely delivered. It was moving and meaningful. So thank you for all of your contributions. Yeah. For those of you that are with us and planning to stick around, I'm going to stop the recording and put up a slide of the educator panel that's up next, and I hope you will stick around for that.